Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live chat. I'm Benji-Sales. Thank you for joining me today. Lots of big gaming news has gone on over the last week, so I thought, all right, let's jump in. Let's get another live chat going. We can talk about whatever you want today, but some of the big, noteworthy things that have happened over the last week. The Last of Us Part 2, got a pretty significant 3-month delay, now coming out at the end of May instead of February when it was originally slated to release. So that's, got a whole bunch of storylines and important things to talk about in regards to that. On top of that, we had Ubisoft yesterday really just breaking out a ton of bad news. It's kind of crazy how much bad news they dropped at once. I had commented yesterday that it was one of the worst batches of bad news at once from a publisher, especially one like Ubisoft, which is typically, very, very successful in what they do. It was just a lot of bad news all at once, and you've seen their stock price take a massive hit. So there's a whole bunch we can talk about in regards to that, and whatever else you want to talk about. The way this chat works, it's your chat. Drop them into the chat on the side, and I will answer and talk about, whatever you want to discuss, because this is your chat. So I've already got a few questions dropping in. So we'll go ahead and address those right off the bat. I'm going to adjust this camera just a bit. Okay. Ahmed Hossein here. Hossein, hello. Please talk about Death Stranding's pre-orders. Do you think it will be successful? All right, Mohammed, I've talked about this a few times on a few different chats as well as on my Twitter. So I'm not going to go like super in depth on this one. But there is, I'll just comment really quick. Pre-orders are very strong for it. They're looking really good. I'm expecting it, as of now. I've been kind of talking about this for months. My expectation is that this very well could be the biggest launch ever for Kojima. I know Metal Gear Solid 5, had a tremendous launch. So it does make it a little bit more challenging because it's not like Kojima comes from small games, right? He comes from big AAA games. And this game is only available on the PlayStation 4. So it definitely makes it more challenging to beat Metal Gear Solid 5. But I'm feeling good about it, at least in NPD. I really do think it will be the biggest debut ever for Kojima, at the very least, in NPD. All right, so hopefully that answers your question a little bit. Raven Hunter, that DBZ shirt, yeah. Gotta rock that Dragon Ball Z every once in a while. Hello, Wrath. Hello, Alex Bailey. What's up? Hello, Wound Up Penguin. Glad my alerts are working. I'm glad to see you here in the chat. All right, another one here from Alex. Benji, a general question. Do you know if Switch has already outsold Xbox One lifetime? Understand if you cannot say due to NDA. Ooh, good question. I'd have to go and look at a few numbers, but I don't believe it has yet. I don't think so yet. I think it's close. I believe it is close to and will soon. But I don't think it has quite eclipsed Xbox One yet. We had an estimate come out recently that believes that Xbox One is somewhere like kind of in that 45 million range shipped, somewhere around there. And I don't believe Switch has quite hit there yet. Raven Hunter stream looks really blurry, of course. It's my normal trash internet down here. Not lagging, but kind of blurry. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna fix it. We've talked about this on the stream before. It happens. My setup is not prime down here, so I'm gonna be making some adjustments, moving to a different room for these streams. But at least, hopefully, you can hear. Hopefully, it's not super lagging. Sorry about that. But yeah, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. Hello, Ricardo. How's it going? So yeah, let's talk about this Last of Us 2 delay a little bit, since no one's asked about that yet. And there is a lot that I want to talk about with that Last of Us 2 delay. So first of all, and let's talk about delays in general, right? Because Ubisoft also announced Gods and Monsters is delayed, Watch Dogs Legion is delayed, Roller Champions is delayed, and what am I forgetting here? That's 3. There was one more. Can't recall off the top of my head now. Watch Dogs Legion, Gods and Monsters, Roller Champions. Oh, and Rainbow Six Quarantine. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, those are all delayed. So delayed. So that insane Q1, Q2 lineup just got a lot thinner over the last couple weeks. And all in all, I think that's probably a good thing for business. It's a bit of a bummer because it was really exciting seeing so many games lining up all at once. Like, it looked like we were about to get this just huge hurrah of releases, and it slimmed down big time. But, you're giving a lot of these games a lot more room now. Like I tweeted, Cyberpunk, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and Animal Crossing just can run away with the first, few months of the year now. They were always going to be the biggest along with The Last of Us. But anytime you have that many games hitting at once, there is going to be some detrimental effect. So all in all, I do think this is probably a good thing for business. Especially for some of the games like Doom Eternal, for example, or some of those smaller games that were originally going to be in that time frame, giving them a little bit more space away from some of these huge heavy hitters. All in all, I think that's probably good. The Last of Us sell just as gigantic as ever, right? It getting a 3-month delay is a bummer for fans. But in terms of sales, not going to have any detrimental impact. It is a pretty big delay, right? 3 months. It's not like huge. It's not like a crazy, scary, wow, this game got delayed a year, something's really wrong kind of thing. But it's also not a minor delay, right? 3 months is a chunk. It's not like a 1 month delay or, a month and a half like we've seen with some games where it means just 3-month delay. To me, seems there's a lot of polish they still. Naughty Dog is trying to create a sequel to one of the most beloved games of all time. So I totally understand them wanting to make sure this game is perfect or as perfect as it can be. But yeah, 3-month delay, that's some time. That's a chunk. So, anyone familiar with development, you can get a lot done in 3 months, especially towards the tail end of a project. So I think all in all, it's going to be a good thing. But it is a bummer for fans. But yeah, okay, let's move on here. Mohammed here again. Hi, is Death Stranding good in pre-orders? Hey, Mohammed, I answered that at the beginning of this chat, but yes. Austin here, Call of Duty Modern Warfare sales expectations. Well, I am expecting Modern Warfare to be the biggest launch for any Call of Duty this generation. I don't know if it'll be the biggest launch ever for Call of Duty. I'm not so sure about that, but of this generation, the current gen of consoles, I am expecting it to be the biggest launch ever for this gen for Call of Duty. Metrics have been through the roof. I expect it's going to break the PlayStation Network pre-order and launch sales records. Big things. It also helps that it's getting pretty good reviews overall. Yeah, I'm expecting Call of Duty Modern Warfare to be massive. So biggest Call of Duty this gen, I think it'll pass Black Ops 4. And yeah, it should be really big success for Infinity Ward. And I think people are excited to get back to that modern setting. We had a bunch of future Call of Duties in a row. We had, like a World War II game. It's been a bit since we've had just a regular modern, Call of Duty take. So I think people are really excited about that, getting back to that kind of setting. So yeah, big expectations for Call of Duty. All right. My Scar H, how much do you think The Last of Us delay will cause sales to go to Cyberpunk among people considering between the two now that Cyberpunk is coming out first? Good question. I definitely think this helps Cyberpunk. It's really the flagship game now, for that first chunk of the year. It always was kind of, one of those big three with Final Fantasy VII. Of course, I always expected it to be bigger than Final Fantasy VII, but that The Last of Us, there was several really big games there, and now it's clearly Cyberpunk is dominating that first chunk of the year. I don't think it hurts The Last of Us. It's coming out later, but The Last of Us is still going to be an absolute monster regardless. And there's still a big enough gap between Cyberpunk and The Last of Us. It's like a month that, there's plenty of time for people to play a bunch of Cyberpunk and still jump into The Last of Us. But I do think this does help Cyberpunk because, like I said, it's going to have all the focus now on all the marketing, all of the discussions, the headlines. It's the game of the early part of 2020 now. So good news for Cyberpunk, as long as they can hold that date. Hopefully that doesn't get delayed as well, right? Ricardo, I'm okay with this delay. Naughty Dog is known for polishing their games to perfection. Yeah, it's just, I don't think that this delay means there's anything wrong with the game. Like, oh man, there's some troubled development going on. I don't think it's anything like that. I just think they know the expectations for this game, the weight that is on this game, and they want to make sure they get it right. And good for them. But it is a bummer for the fans. I totally get why some people would be upset by it. But all in all, you're going to get a better game, by this delay. DT, can we pretty much conclude that Gods and Monsters, Rainbow Six Quarantine, and Watch Dogs 3 are at least now cross-gen titles, unless, of course, all three come out prior to holiday 2020 season? So Ubisoft actually commented on this a little bit, and they said games like Watch Dogs Legion are going to have next-gen enhancements. They flat out said it. Like it's not, this isn't a rumor. This is straight from Ubisoft. I do think you'll see most, if not all three of those games still hit before next gen. But definitely they are going to be getting next gen enhanced. And now with them being delayed, I could see a lot more people waiting to buy those games until next gen, right? Because depending on how big the delay is, we don't exactly know their new dates. We know the time frame, but we don't know the dates, the exact months. So depending on how far some of those are pushed, Watch Dogs originally, like for example, Watch Dogs Legion was so early in the year, and same thing with Gods and Monsters. Like they were so early that I still think their sales would have been plenty strong, because it's like you had almost a year until the next gen consoles would be here. But now with them delayed, them being probably, months before next gen hits, I could see a lot of people just waiting to get those until the PlayStation 5 and Scarlet are out. So yeah, I do think that you'll see some effect there on their launch sales. DT, The Last of Us 2 and Avengers will now battle it out in May. Yeah, good point. I've talked about this before. Avengers is the one I'm most unsure how it's going to perform out of the big games, early in 2020, in those first 6 months. Avengers is the one I'm just most unsure of. It should be massive. It's Avengers. We saw how big Spider-Man was. We know this is a big AAA game, but it's kind of had, mixed feedback. So I'm very curious. I'm not sitting here telling you Avengers is not going to sell well. I just don't know. That's the one I'm most like, I'm very confident in The Last of Us Part 2. I'm very confident in Cyberpunk. I'm feeling really good about Final Fantasy VII Remake. Avengers, I just like, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to shake out. All right. Ryan Tolu here. When do you expect PS5 and Xbox to official announce for both? Okay. This is a total guess here, but I think Microsoft will talk about Scarlet a little bit at XO19 in London coming up. I don't think it's going to be their blowout, so don't go in expecting Microsoft to be like, yo, here's all of the Scarlet craziness, but I think you'll get a little bit, just a guess. I think Microsoft's going to talk a little bit about Scarlet there. And then I think Sony goes in February, kind of like how they did with the PS4. I think they'll have a dedicated standalone event for the PlayStation 5, probably in February. And then Microsoft, their full blowout, maybe like March, April, May, somewhere around there. They went after Sony last gen, right? I shouldn't say last gen. I should say this gen. Sony revealed the PS4 before Microsoft came out and did the Xbox One event. So I'm kind of expecting a little bit of the same here, but I do think you get a little bit at XO19 coming up from Microsoft. Just a little bit, but not a blowout. All right. Alex Bailey, what's your thoughts on Outer Worlds so far? I think it could be a success, right? It got a lot of buzz from those reviews. Reviews are very strong for it. A lot of people are saying, it's an RPG of the year contender. So I think it's going to do well for itself. I kind of talked about this. I'm very interested to watch its sales on Xbox to see if Gears 5 was a one-off in terms of how cannibalized that was by Game Pass, or if that's going to be the trend for these Xbox games moving forward. So I'm going to be paying a very close attention to that split. You'll see me talk about that, over the coming days as I get some data and I get some looks on that. If this game starts skewing like crazy, 70, 80% PS4 sales, again, that's going to say to me that Game Pass is cannibalizing Xbox sales. So if I'm seeing really heavy, lean to PlayStation, that's going to be another indicator to me that Game Pass is cannibalizing. So, but I think it's going to do well for Obsidian, and I think this is actually going to do pretty good. Don't expect some kind of crazy performance out of it. I don't think it's going to be something like that, but I do think it's going to be successful. It's got a ton of buzz behind it now. It's really picked up over the last week, so it should do well. All right. Ricardo, Doom will be a hit. Yeah, I agree. A lot of hype around it. Yeah, Doom's going to do well. I think some people got confused by a tweet that I wrote whenever I was saying that Final Fantasy VII and Cyberpunk and Animal Crossing are going to dominate the early part of 2020. A lot of people are like, you forgot about Doom. You forgot about Doom. Doom's going to do well. I absolutely expect Doom Eternal to do well. I don't think it's going to do bad. I just don't think it's going to do as good as those three. I'm expecting all three of those other games to be 10 million plus sellers. I really am. The only one that might not is Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I still think it can hit 10 million. And I'm not confident Doom Eternal can hit 10 million. That's a big number. That's a really big number. So not impossible, but that is not my expectation for Doom Eternal. But I do think it's going to do well. It is going to do good. All right. What's your thoughts on the Fallout 76 $100 subscription? I don't know what to think about what Bethesda is up to lately. I feel bad because really the last year, anytime I've talked about Bethesda, a lot of it's been kind of in a negative connotation. And believe it or not, Bethesda makes some of my favorite games ever. I'm a huge fan of the Fallout franchise, huge fan of the Elder Scrolls franchise. Love, a ton of their stuff. But they've really been just making some bizarre choices lately. And I just don't like this idea. I think it would be more okay if Fallout 76 went free to play and they started introducing mechanics like this, right? They started introducing these kinds of passes and things like that. If Fallout 76 was a completely free to play game, but the fact you still pay for it and it has these new subs on it too, it just feels weird. I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest. Not a big fan of the move. Mohammed, thanks. Hey, you're welcome. Divish here. Death Stranding, talked about that a little bit earlier. Austin, thanks for addressing your question. Of course. This is your chat. I'm just here to answer. Ryan, it kind of blows my mind how Call of Duty is so successful these days. I don't see the hype around it yet. It sells so much. That wasn't the case for oldest Call of Duties. People used to talk about them a lot. Interesting post here. And I do agree with you in a way, but my counter to that would be look at FIFA and NBA 2K20, right? These are games that, again, if you're in online circles for gaming, you see very little talk about it, but they are some of the biggest games in the world. A lot of our online gaming communities are still just a bubble, even though they're big, right? They're getting bigger and bigger. There's a ton of people talking about games on Twitter. There's a ton of people talking about, games all over the place, forums, Facebook, wherever you talk about games. But at the end of the day, your average gamer, right? Your average person who goes out, buys a game, they're not spending their free time really talking about games online. Not many of them. It's more your enthusiasts. And I think the core enthusiast demographic used to be a lot more excited about Call of Duty because we weren't exposed to so many years in a row of Call of Duty. It's every single year, no matter what, in and out, just constant barrage of them. So I think it used to be a bigger deal to this, core, really excited gamers because, Call of Duty was still kind of in its infancy and it was growing. Whereas now it's become like that NBA, that FIFA. It's just become this completely mainstream, everyone plays it. No one really spends a ton of time talking about it kind of games. But I do feel a lot more buzz for Modern Warfare than I have some of the other ones, right? I'm definitely feeling some buzz for it. Personally, this is the first Call of Duty I've bought. Well, I bought World War II, but I skipped Infinite Warfare, skipped Black Ops 4, skipped Yeah, I think this will only be the second in 5 years that I've bought Call of Duty. I'm actually going to pick it up today. But no, I get what you're saying. I definitely get what you're saying. Muhammad, what about new Star Wars? Ooh, yeah. Do you think it will be successful and make EA think differently about single player games? Muhammad, absolutely. I think Jedi Fallen Order is going to do really, really well for EA and Respawn. The buzz after those previews, the previews were glowing for the most part, very, very positive, and I think it's going to do really well. EA is expecting to ship somewhere between 6 to 8 million by the end of their fiscal year, so by March. They're expecting end of March. They're expecting to ship 6 to 8 million copies of that game. And I think that's definitely doable, 100%. As long as it's good as the previews look, as long as, those previews were very, very positive. In fact, it almost sounded like a game of the year contender. Not saying it's going to be game of the year, but, one of the better games this year. I definitely think it can hit that number. So I am expecting good things for Jedi Fallen Order. Ricardo, just heard of the success of Plague Tale and Greedfall. Ooh, I might have missed this, Ricardo. What did they say? Somebody want to drop that in the chat? Because I haven't seen that. I'm excited, though. I'm glad to hear about that. Here we go. Who we got here? Jeff, do you think that Doom Eternal has a better chance of doing well now due to the other delays? For sure, Jeff. Yes, absolutely. I think getting games like The Last of Us out of there, getting games like Watch Dogs Legion out of there, it's just freeing up a lot more space. So it's funny, when Doom Eternal was first delayed, we were all making jokes like, what is going on with Bethesda? Like, what are you choosing to do here? Like, we were all glad the game was going to get the polish it needed, but we were all kind of like, the game's moving out of a slower period just straight into all this oncoming traffic of games. And in the end, it worked out for them, right? It almost through pure luck, because I highly doubt Bethesda and id had any kind of idea that all these delays would happen. But yeah, in the end, it works out great for them, because a lot of those games that were going to directly compete with it move out of the way. So good news for them. Yeah, very good for Doom Eternal. It somehow all ended up working out very, very well. All right. Without Watch Dogs and Last of Us, yeah, exactly, Ricardo. Yep. Wound Up. I think you missed my question. Oh, sorry, Wound Up. What was it? Let me scroll up here. Sorry, I think I missed Wound Up's question. Yeah, I did, Wound Up. Sorry. Do you think Death Stranding will be released on PC? There's a rumor it'd be rated for PC in Australia. Yeah, this has been a question of debate for a while. Whenever this game was first announced, they basically were saying it was going to go to PC, and then like that all got hushed up and just went away. Like it just disappeared. And so people have been debating for a long time, like, so is this going to eventually be a PC game, or is this now just PlayStation 4? I don't know. Don't have any info for you there, Wound Up. I'll say this. I won't be shocked if it goes to PC. I don't think it'll be right off the bat. If it does, this is just an if. I think, it'll be a full year or something like that first before something like that were to happen. But I wouldn't be shocked, because Kojima Productions isn't owned by Sony. And the Death Stranding IP, from what I understand, is owned by Kojima. It's not owned by Sony. So, we don't know exactly what kind of deal they worked out, whenever they did this exclusivity agreement. But it wouldn't shock me. It would not surprise me if it does go to PC, but it won't be early. I don't think it's one of those things like, 3 months later, this is on PC. If something like that were to happen, I think it's going to be a full year or something like that first. So yeah, sorry I missed your question, Wound Up. DT, will you do a recap video for both XO 19 and Game Awards? Yeah, for sure. Also, is PSX just not happening this year? It does not look like it. Figured we hear something about it by now. Yeah, DT, it's looking like PSX is a no-go for this year. You never know, something crazy could happen with the last second announcement, but it's looking very unlikely. I think Sony's just saving everything for February for the PS5 reveal. So, I think that's why you're getting PSX. They're trying to build everything in that PS5 reveal. I think the PS5 reveal event when they do it is going to be big because Sony's been so quiet for so long this year. There's been a little bit, they've dropped a little bit of news, but there hasn't been a big E3 show, stuff like that. So I think the PS5 reveal event will be bigger than even the PS4 one was. Whenever they come out, I think they're going to come out guns blazing. So I think PSX is unlikely. In regards to XO19 and Game Awards, I'd love to do a live stream of it, with chat and talk about it with all of you and do all that kind of stuff. I'd love to. Just depends on how work goes. I don't know if I'm going to be at work when those are streaming or not, but at the very least, we'll do a recap. We'll break down all the big crazy announcements that'll happen. So DT for sure, one way or the other, whether that's live or afterwards. Dear Ace, don't know if somebody already asked, do you think Modern Warfare 2019 can top franchise record sales? We talked about this a little bit earlier. I am expecting Modern Warfare to be the biggest Call of Duty launch this gen. I don't know if it can be the biggest launch ever. Not saying it can't, but I don't know. But I am expecting it to be the biggest launch ever for Call of Duty on Xbox One, PS4. Do think it's going to set that record. Sino, even Doom being multi-plat. This is probably in regards to my 10 million sales discussion earlier. Yeah, even still, I don't think Doom does 10 million. That's a big number. I'd love to be wrong on that, but it doesn't look like a 10 million seller to me. Just doesn't look like it. Glover Parker, March 2020 looks pretty great so far, but which one tops the charts? Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, or Animal Crossing? Ooh, great question. Let's do this. Let's just do a super early, completely early guess. This is with zero data coming in, so I could be totally wrong on this. This is just a gut prediction. My guess, keep in mind, Animal Crossing will have no digital sales tracked. So that is one thing we need to consider. Man, that's tough. That is tough. If I had to make an early guess right now, I would say Final Fantasy VII, Animal Crossing, Doom Eternal, but I could totally see Animal Crossing and Final Fantasy VII being flipped. The only real reason my hunch is Final Fantasy VII over Animal Crossing is because Animal Crossing will not have digital tracked. None. Whereas Final Fantasy VII will have all of its digital sales included. That makes a big difference, especially nowadays when digital is becoming heavier and heavier portion of sales. It definitely that's a big deal. So that's my guess, but I don't know. I might change my mind once we actually get to March, but that would be my guess right now. All right. Doom is multiplat and it's big on PC. Yeah, for sure. I get all that. Going to be close. I think it's going to be, they're all going to do good. Isma here. Can Pokemon Sword and Shield beat Smash Ultimate opening month? Well, definitely not in NPD because NPD will rank those separately. They count them as two separate SKUs. So even though they're technically the same game, just with slight differences between them, they are counted separate. So there's no chance that they break Smash's record for the biggest, Nintendo launch in NPD. It can't do that because of how they are tracked. They will be tracked as two separate games. Combined, it's possible. It's definitely possible. We're talking about Pokemon. We're talking about an absolutely gigantic franchise, and we've seen how good the Switch is at propelling exclusive Nintendo software, right? Breath of the Wild has done unbelievable by Zelda terms. Smash Ultimate, just shattered records. Mario Odyssey did incredible. So Switch can seriously push software. Like, it's amazing at pushing that Nintendo first party software. So combined, I would say it's possible, but it won't do it in terms of, like, you won't see NPD report come out and talk about how Pokemon's a new record and beat Smash, because those games will be separate. They won't be combined. Hope that answers it for you. DT, Final Fantasy VII Remake will definitely hit 10 million units sold once it's ported onto PC and or Xbox. Yeah, it does seem like that game's probably going to go multi-plat eventually, because the whole way that it was announced and it was said play first on PlayStation 4, right? So it does. I don't know if it's going to hit Xbox or not. It might, but I do think Final Fantasy VII Remake definitely eventually hits PC. Square Enix puts pretty much all their games on PC. Not every single one, but a ton of the old Final Fantasies and stuff are on there. Final Fantasy 13's on there, 15's on there. So I'm sure 7 Remake eventually will hit PC. So yeah, I do think it can do 10 million, lifetime for sure. Patrick, hi guys. What up, Patrick? Alex, hey, Benji, have you looked at the data for the Pokemon Switch Lite system pre-orders? If so, is it looking promising? Alex, I haven't looked at any or gotten reported to any data on that yet. I'll start digging into it and try to see if I can find out some info on that. But as of now, I haven't had any of that shared with me, and I directly haven't seen it. So I don't have a ton of info on that one. Patrick, with The Last of Us Part 2 delayed, do you think we'll be getting the PS5 reveal in February? Yeah. Yep. That's my expectation, Patrick. February. I think so. I don't think it's a big deal if they talk about PlayStation. People are going to want The Last of Us Part 2 on day one as much as possible anyways, because that game is so heavy story based. People aren't going to want it spoiled for them. So, if this was something that was more of like a casual type game, it didn't have a super in-depth story, you might see some people hold off more for the PS5 version. But I think a game like that, people are not going to want to be spoiled. So they're going to be in their day one, as much as possible. So I think Death Stranding is a Sony IP, is on the Death Stranding site. Interesting. I didn't know that. So if Sony actually owns the Death Stranding IP, that's interesting. And I'm surprised Kojima agreed to that. But it could be. Yeah, I don't know the details on that. That does surprise me, though, that Kojima would give Sony that IP. I know Sony likes to have control of the IP they publish. Like, that's a known thing. They like to own that IP. So in a way, it doesn't surprise me that Sony would want that. But it does surprise me Kojima would agree to that. That would surprise me. But it very well could be true. Z-Dark, how are Pokemon Sword and Shield pre-orders looking? Huge, big, real big. Yeah, it should be a monster. It's going to be interesting to see if it can beat Sun and Moon, because here's the problem. It could, very well could. But again, Nintendo just does not share digital, unfortunately, with anybody. They don't share with NPD. They don't share it in the charts that come out for EMEAA that include, digital now. A lot of digital is included in that. Nintendo also doesn't share that. Nintendo is, still on this a bit of a old way of thinking, in my opinion, of not sharing digital sales. So that does make it tougher to beat Sun and Moon, the previous record, because none of, Sword and Shield's digital is going to be included in any charts. Nintendo will probably give PR, though, if it does. So, it'll be interesting. I don't know if it'll beat it in NPD, but it might actually set a new Pokemon record, because Nintendo will probably put out their own PR on it, I would guess. If the chat, thanks, everyone. It's been an awesome chat. You bring the best questions. I love doing this. Carnage Ghost, hello there. Do you think the leaked Harry Potter game will be released in 2021 and the leaked Guardians game in 2022 while Monolith Production released their game next year? How about BioShock 4? Whoa, this is a whole bunch of heavy hitting questions at once. Let's dive into it. It's fun. It's fun to kind of guess at stuff. Harry Potter, I think, is going to be 2021. I do think that, and I think it might not be late 2021 early either. I think it might be sometime in that first half of the year, possibly. Not for sure. I'm just going to be guessing on all these because I do not have the details on this. My guess, 2021. The Guardians game, I'm guessing you're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy that's being made, supposedly, being published by Square Enix, I believe, if I recall correctly. Could be wrong on that, but I think it's Square Enix that has Guardians. 2022, maybe. We know nothing about that game other than apparently it's in development. So who knows? That's a huge unknown. And BioShock 4, we know it exists. We know there's a BioShock game in development. I believe it was Kotaku and Jason Schreier have talked about this. It was a while back, but they did talk about it. I believe they were talking about that back when I'm trying to remember when, but yeah, anyway, who have talked about it. It's in development. When that game's going to release, I don't know. My assumption is it's a next-gen game. Basically, at this point, if any game is not announced, you can assume it's next-gen. like literally. That doesn't mean it won't appear on these consoles. It might be cross-gen, but basically any game that is not announced is going to be on next-gen consoles, which is pretty exciting. I tweeted about that, not that long ago. Cross-gen's also, of course, a thing. But what I mean is it's exciting to know that basically every game we don't have firm details about is going to appear on next-gen. That's really, really exciting. So I'm not sure on BioShock 4 either. If I had to take a total guess, 2021 maybe, because it has been in development for a while. It's not something that just kicked up development. So unless something crazy happened and they had to like scrap and restart, 2021 seems possible for that game. I don't think it's 20 by any means. So 2021 will be my guess. So no, Quantic Dream Games is owned by Sony as well and is on Epic. So who knows? Yeah, good call. Good call. So even if Sony owns the IP, even if they own Death Stranding's IP, maybe it will appear, on PC still. All right. Jaffe Taffy, thoughts on Death Stranding, like your Metacritic prediction and public feedback prediction? Interesting question. Like, how's Metacritic and the public feedback going to go? I don't know. There's been some reports that I don't know. I haven't been following this super closely, but I think there's been a couple rumors that a few media might not be loving Death Stranding, and then some others like praising it. So I could see it being somewhat divisive. Who knows? That game is so weird. I have no idea how that one's going to fall. And public feedback, again, who knows? I feel like Kojima is hiding a lot with that game in typical Kojima fashion. I have a feeling when you play that game, it's not going to be everything you've seen in trailers. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that you're going to be doing that we don't know. So, yeah, who knows? I could see it being very divisive, though. DT, do you recall off the top of your head how Final Fantasy 15 performed on PC? Really, really strong. It did really good. That's why I would be shocked if Final Fantasy 7 Remake doesn't appear on PC. I don't know exactly. I can't recall the last lifetime unit sales on PC, but we're talking, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of units. We're talking a lot of units. Not like it sold 100,000, hundreds of thousands of units. So it'd be weird if Final Fantasy 7 Remake doesn't ever appear on PC. Probably like a year or something later for the console would be my guess. Benji, do you feel it was odd that the original release date for The Last of Us 2 was too close to Final Fantasy 7 Remake? Do you also think the recent titles of games being delayed is to make way for the PS5 meeting? Good question. I don't think that's the case for The Last of Us. I think that game, they just, Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog, they want that game to be as perfect to their vision as they can make it. So I think that's what the delay is there. In regards to it being close to Final Fantasy 7, I talked about this before. I didn't think it would really hurt either game too much because they were so different. One is a Japanese RPG. The other one's a super Western style, survival, even horror elements type game. So just radically different games. So I didn't think it would hurt either one too bad, but it being delayed definitely helps Final Fantasy 7, like for sure. If either game got the boost from this being delayed, it would be Final Fantasy 7 for sure. And in regards to other stuff being delayed to make way for PS5, I don't think so. I think it's just been different reasons for different delays. The Ubisoft stuff really has to do with, Breakpoint and Division 2 really missing expectations. Like those games significantly underperformed. And I think Ubisoft is doing a bit of a rethinking on how they handle their games moving forward. They kind of talked about this. They want bigger gaps in their games now. And not in terms of like how many per year come out, but in terms of like the genre and the franchise, right? They feel like Breakpoint hit too soon after Wildlands, which I do agree with. I don't think that was the only issue. So I think anyone thinking, including people at Ubisoft, if they think that was the only problem, that it was just too close to Wildlands. No, there's other issues there as well. But I do agree. I do think it was too soon. These big service-based games, if you're going to do it, and same thing with Division, if you're going to do a sequel to a major service, games as a service type game, I think you need seriously at least 5 years between them. I think you need a gap. like a gap. I don't think 3 years is enough. It's just too close. Instead, you should just be pumping out updates. You know, a better example for Ubisoft is Siege. Look at how good Siege is doing, right? Siege, if they would have dropped a sequel to Siege, I think you same sort of thing that you're seeing with the Division. So again, you're seeing Watch Dogs and stuff delayed. They're just, reassessing their business. Okay. Well, I'll answer the questions that are here, and then we'll call it a chat. Sino, Insomniac wanted to do Sunset Overdrive for PS4, but Sony wanted to own the IP. Insomniac rejected and goes for Microsoft. Yep. I remember that. I remember that being the case. Sony likes to control their IP. Alex Bailey, with all the UB delays, what do you think their E3 2020 looks like? Deeper looks into everything that was just delayed. For sure, I think you'll see a big blowout on next-gen Assassin's Creed, because that's going to be coming next holiday. I can almost guarantee it. Like, that's going to be the holiday. The big Ubisoft holiday 2020 game is going to be Assassin's Creed Vikings, Ragnarok, whatever it's called. So I think that's going to get the main focus, Alex, is a big Assassin's Creed showing. Now that next-gen platforms by then will be announced, they'll probably finally say, hey, Beyond Good and Evil 2 is a next-gen game, and they'll probably have, a bit of a blowout on Beyond Good and Evil 2 as well. That would be my hunch, is the big ones. Wound up, do you think Microsoft can make a comeback with the Scarlet and regain consumer confidence like Nintendo did with Switch? Good question. I do think that Scarlet is going to do better for Microsoft than Xbox One did. I am expecting overall Scarlet to perform better for them than the Xbox One. This was just a really rough generation for them. I think they've made the kind of changes as a business that they need to for next gen. I'm not expecting them to be market leader. I still fully expect the PlayStation 5 to be the market leader, to be the best-selling platform next gen, between Xbox and Microsoft. Nintendo's kind of in their own thing. It's hard to directly compare them because the consoles don't release at the exact same times, and it's just kind of different. But directly comparing Microsoft and Sony, I do expect PlayStation 5 to still be the market leader next gen between them. But I do think Scarlet does better than the Xbox One. DT, have you heard anything regarding Ubisoft Massive's Avatar game? No, I have not. They've been silent since the initial early 2017 announcement. Yeah, I know, DT. I agree. Nothing. Haven't heard a word. Haven't heard a whisper. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on with that game. Ilio, hi, Benji. What are your expectations for the Nintendo Q2 forecast out in a few days? Cool. Yeah. I definitely think you're going to see Astral Chain probably hit 1 million shipped, would be my guess. That they'll probably talk about that. That Astral Chain units, which would be good for the style, and for a platinum game, that'd be solid. I think you'll see them talk about Fire Emblem a bunch, how Fire Emblem 3 Houses did. My expectation is that it has shipped 3+ million. I think at least 3 million. We'll see how much over that, but my guess is Fire Emblem 3 Houses has gone over 3 million. And they'll also talk, I'm sure, about Light, how much Light has shipped. Hopefully they give us that. I'd love to see exactly, a Light breakdown. How much has Light, really shipped globally? I'd love to see that. And overall, in terms of hardware, I'm expecting, big growth year over year, like a really, really big double digit, 20, 30, even maybe above 30, but I'm not sure, but at least 20 to 30% growth year over year in shipments as well. Those are my expectations. Ricardo, your game of the year. Ooh, fun question. Right now, it's been tough. There's been a bunch that I've really loved. Right now, for me, it's probably Control, which I know is not going to be at the top of many people's lists, but I love weird stuff. Like, that's why I'm excited for Death Stranding. I love really weird games, and Control was the definition of weird. So that's probably my favorite, but I also loved Resident Evil 2 Remake. That one's right up there. I really enjoyed Fire Emblem 3 Houses. That's my RPG of the year right now, and my favorite Switch game of the year. And I really liked Gears 5. Those 4 are probably my 4 favorites as of now. Probably Control, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, and Gears 5. Those are probably the 4 games I enjoyed the most this year so far. My last question, from Carnage here, do you think Monolith Production will make another Lord of the Rings game or a completely new IP, like Shadow of War sequel or the loot box Backlash? Good question. I was actually just talking about this with somebody recently. Monoliths do, right? If you look at their development cycles traditionally, Monolith is due to start talking about their next game. My hunch is it's another Lord of the Rings game. Don't know for sure if it's another Mordor game. Maybe it is. Maybe it's another, that Mordor series, or maybe it's a totally different kind of Lord of the Rings game. But that's a big IP. Lord of the Rings is huge. Those games sell pretty strongly. So I don't think you would see WB just completely not have a Lord of the Rings game, on the table in some form. So I do suspect that you'll hear from them soon on what they're working on, and I do expect that to be a Lord of the Rings game. That's my guess. Still might even use, the Nemesis system and stuff like that, but I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of leave the Mordor branding behind, because it does kind of pigeonhole them a little bit, right? Like they have to, if you're going to call the game Mordor, you still got to basically have a chunk of your game set in Mordor, like that location. And I know in the second one, they kind of changed things up a little bit, but it's like, I won't be surprised if their next Lord of the Rings game, it branches out a little bit more, just a total guess. But I do think it's a Lord of the Rings game from them. Mike St. Jules, thanks for answering, man. Of course, Mike. Of course. I love doing these chats. Thank you all for your questions. We're almost done. DT, Monolith had job postings which mentioned a sci-fi project. Oh, interesting, DT. I had no idea about this. That would be interesting. Had no clue. I wonder then who would be making a Lord of the Rings game, because like I said, I just don't think WB would just be having a Lord of the Rings game in production. Arkham Knight Hero, what games do you think PS5 exclusive will launch with? My guess is a game from Guerrilla, whether that's going to be a horror game. I think one of those two is going to be the big exclusive, like the big early, here is your PS5 game. This is the game you need to go out and get a PS5 for from Sony. My hunch is Guerrilla, because if you look at the rest of their studios, they're just not ready. Naughty Dog is not going to be ready for launch. Sucker Punch has Ghost of Tsushima, so that I'm sure you'll see a bunch of cross-gen, implementations for that, some boosts on how that game looks. But in terms of like an exclusive next-gen game, I do think it's going to be Guerrilla. They just seem to be the one in the best position from Sony Studios. They're big, they're big AAA games. Guerrilla seems to be the most likely candidate. And then I'm expecting, of course, Call of Duty to be there at launch next year. Assassin's Creed. Those are, I think, the three big, PlayStation 5 games. Last ones. Dear Ace, do you think we see peak Switch sales this year or grow next year? Without knowing the release slate for next year, it's kind of tough to know if this is the peak or not. If I had to make a total blind guess, I think this year's sales might be higher than next. Total guess, though. Could be completely wrong on that. But that's my guess. My guess is this year's higher. All right, last question. Harry, do you have any thoughts on Nintendo's stock price steadily declining? Yeah, that's interesting, right? Not sure how closely you follow stock prices. They're down 12% in the last month or so. Not sure why, considering strong sales. Good question, Harry. I do follow the stock for market for, the gaming industry only. I don't follow anything else. But I don't follow it like super close. I'm not like an investor level, hardcore investor level stocks guy that can tell you the plus and minuses of everything. But I do like to keep an eye on it, from a distance, because it is, worth noting. I'm not sure on that. It's weird to me. I don't know if there's a bit of a belief with investors that light is not as strong as they want it to be. Maybe that's a thought process. Maybe they're expecting bigger light sales than what we're getting. But overall sales have been great. Software sales have been great. There's also an argument maybe that investors are not happy with the mobile offerings from Nintendo. Mobile hasn't been performing that strongly for them, to be honest with you. In terms of revenue and stuff, and over the last few years, it hasn't been that big of a thing. I think maybe some investors expected stronger growth in mobile. But these are just my guesses. All right, everyone. Thank you. Thanks for joining the chat as always. If you could, make sure you hit like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you don't already. Help the channel out a bunch. Thanks for coming to the stream as always. I love doing these. They're my favorite things to do each week. I love it. Love the interaction. Thank you, Exile End. Thank you, Wound Up Penguin. Thank you, everyone. And I will see you in the next chat, the next stream, or on Twitter. See ya.